Thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here and speak in front of some experts regarding supply chain risk management. I'm very excited to share our story on how we're trying to navigate supply chain disruptions, particularly from a freight management point of view. So I'm head of risk management and sustainability, focusing on our transport activities at Schaeffler. So before I share the story on how we try to do that and hopefully also manage the more unpredictable risks, I would like to use one or two sentences on what Schaeffler is, so that you understand the kind of complexity that we're dealing with in our transport supply chains. Second, I would like to provide a taxonomy of the type of risks that we have to have on the radar, and then also deep dive in briefly showing you the tripartite approach that we're using towards transport risk management, which is people, process, and technology. All of these three elements you need, otherwise you fall from a three-legged stool, that I will also explain the principle that we're using. So let's dive right into Schaeffler. Just a few words about Schaeffler. We identify as the motion technology company. So we produce high precision components that are to be found in drivetrains, in chassis applications, or industrial bearing solutions. So from small rings to super 3 meter, 6 meter diameter bearings. The likeliness is high that also you have been moved by something where a Schaeffler component is sitting in, similar to Bosch, obviously. We have been growing to 120,000 employee company with a merger with Vitesco. We are now present in 250 locations, and this also is relevant for transport management because it means that we have a global transport management team. We have a global supply chain and transportation that needs attention. And if you have a global exposure, you will have the full portfolio of risks that are hitting you, that we're getting to in just a moment. This is the range of products that we are offering. So you can see it from two-wheelers over truck and bus, automotive, obviously, aerospace. In our vision in transport management, risk management is to ensure that all of these products can be delivered to our customers in time, which implies that we need to make sure that the transport of the components, raw materials, you name it, from suppliers to our plants, between our plants, and from plants to our customers that we're freight responsible for is reliable. So we have to foresee risks, hopefully mitigate them beforehand, or if the famous shit hits the fan, that we have solutions ready to act on our feet and we don't take 2, 3, 4 days to find out what actually happened. So this is the scope of risk management that I'll be talking about. And let's start with some good and bad news. Maybe let's start with the bad news. Not surprising, otherwise we wouldn't be sitting here. The world is not becoming less riskier or more stable. In fact, actually, even in 2025, we're expected to still live in a rather volatile and risky world with some more black swans out there. We get in a minute to what black swans are from a risk management point of view. But I took the liberty to scroll my LinkedIn network of risk experts who are basically saying, I mean, the image on the left-hand side, which is AI generated, speaks for itself, right? I mean, there's all sorts of risks, the black swans, the great rhinos that are destroying our transport supply chains. On the right-hand side, we're dealing with armed conflicts between states, with extreme weather events, as Otto and Winfried also mentioned, and geopolitical conflicts. And these, by the way, are the top 3 risks that the World Economic Forum just released in a recent report. And there's more, like cybersecurity, not to forget here. The good news is, also for the organizers of this event, there is ways how to manage these risks, and there's best practices that we can share, right? So once we have identified them, hopefully, and I will share with you in a minute how we intend to do this at Schaeffler, you can prepare for the most relevant and impactful for you guys. So it's important that you make this from your perspective, right? From your supply chain's perspective. Not everything that's happening in the world is regarding you. So you have to identify those ones that are most relevant for you. Contingency planning is one thing that both gentlemen already mentioned, and building up inventory buffers is not the holy grail anymore. As you mentioned, Otto, rightfully so, that doesn't make you agile, it just makes you costly, it binds capital, yada, yada, yada. I don't have to cite all of these things to you guys, the experts. But you also have to explore alternative solutions, which means that also transport management needs to work with purchasing and inform them about certain risks that we see, that trade routes are threatened, that purchasing needs to act to fully move away from a certain thing. But today we're focusing on transport management. So before we dive into the approach at Schaeffler, let's have a look at the zoo of risks that are out there. I brought 3 species with me, the black swan, the gray rhino, and the white swan. There's other type like the black jellyfish, the white elephant, not to name the pink elephant that's always in the room. So I'm sure there's going to be even more risk coming up as the world is becoming more volatile and unpredictable. But let's start with these 3. Let's deep dive into black swans. I'll start with some examples, and then I will recite the common characteristics of these of this type of risk. So we're talking about black swans in terms of the corona pandemic, for instance. We're talking about the Houthi missile attacks on vessels going through the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, and we're talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. What all of these risks have in common is that they were highly improbable and or difficult to predict. But they all had a massive impact. Now, in hindsight, what I kind of see already popping up in your heads is like, yeah, but I mean, the Russian invasion, if you look at the history, that was kind of foreseeable in hindsight. And this is exactly the thing of black swans. And actually, the nice thing about black swans that once they happen, you can start learning from them by trying to trace the facts that actually did lead to the event popping up. Right? So there is some learning moment that we can do. I mean, experts warned about a pandemic like the corona crisis coming up because of our way of life, basically invading the animal sphere and us basically taking away the space for animals. It was a matter of time that this was happen. Same with the Houthi shooting. I mean, we know about all the issues in the Middle East. Same with the Ukraine and Russian crisis. I mean, it kind of built up, right? And they are really the most difficult ones to spot. Gray rhinos. Gray rhino examples are extreme weather events. We have a potential South China Sea blockage resulting from territorial conflict over resources. We also have the Panama Canal, the drought that we had starting in August 23, I believe, lasting until July or so last year. What do all of these events have in common? They all had a high impact, similar to the black swans. The difference is that they were more probable, they were more visible because there were certain series of warnings or pieces of evidence that you could trace if you carefully monitored the situation in the world that would lead up to this. So we actually used a certain series of alert patterns to detect that there will be something going on with the Panama Canal. We saw drought messages coming in. So we decided already in August 23 to leave the Panama Canal with our vessels piece by piece to make sure that we don't get into a situation where we have to wait in line, have to detour, and you name it. Same with extreme weather. I mean, there's all of these reports for 5-6 years. This is like super big now. It's not a surprise, right? So everyone who's surprised now, well, we might have missed something here. And same with the South China Sea. There's all these military activities from China, Taiwan, and these are warning signs that something is stirring up there. Last but not least, we have the white swans, and I would really say that this is the one that everyone should catch. Those events are rather certain, and their impacts are known. And examples for this is really the typhoon and hurricane seasons in Southeast Asia and or the East Coast of the United States. There's certain strike seasons, typically in fall, that you can estimate, and they're also well in advance because you know tariffs are running out, wage agreements are running out, and or winter weather. Those are seasonal things that we all know they're coming. But we're always surprised because it's like Christmas, right? Christmas is always like at the same time of the year, but we always are surprised. So what is important is that you start shifting gear, right? So if you would take a risk matrix of mapping the probability and the level of impact of these risks, we would find swans and rhinos on the upper high level of impact. But then in terms of the occurrence or probability, swans are on the very left-hand side because it's difficult to identify them. Rhinos somewhere in the middle, and swans could basically be somewhere in the lower or the upper right half. What is important in mapping these risks is that you really have your risk appetite ready. So know what kind of risks you really want to focus on. Is it more extreme weather stuff? Is it geopolitical? It all depends on your supply chain and your global network. That is for you to decide where is our neurologic point, so to say. It's also important to digitize the intel as much as possible so that you don't have to manually seek for all of these information. And to then verify this intel with internal stakeholders, expert. In our case, we talk to our LSPs. Have you heard of this? Is this true? What does this mean? And then, of course, focusing only on those things that are of highest impact for you. Mapping is one thing, but then preparing is the holy grail. So don't get stuck in mapping. At some point, it's really important to have the courage, okay, let's do something about them. So this is a flip matrix, kind of for preparing. You see now here that the probability of occurrence has been exchanged with the readiness to respond. So you ideally want all of your risks shift to the left-hand side. And you can start basically by focusing on those ones with the highest impact because you only have finite resources, and make sure that you align the risk appetite with external partners, also internal stakeholders, and then also get approval for all the contingency measures that you have aligned on for the different risks that you have identified as impactful and relevant. So this for typology, and let's now deep dive on the three-partite approach that we take at Schaeffler, combining people, technology, and process. That enables us towards resilient supply chains and transportation. We really have a clear guiding philosophy, which is really technology follows processes to support people in the pursuit of supply chain resilience. Yeah, so the people element is really at the forefront for us. Why is that? Starting at the upper portion, because risk management really is a global effort. You need regional, local eyes, ears, hands, hearts on the ground. To make sure that once you have certain events popping up, that you have someone who can help you verify, take actions in different time zones, different languages, and external partners are part of it. I'll have 2 more slides on that afterwards. The process component is super important. Once you have all of these people in your global network, you need to have a common process in place. Otherwise, it's an unconcerted effort. People do this and that, but there's no unity in the action. So we have made sure that we have established 2 years ago a reactive and proactive risk management process that everyone in our network knows, follows, is audit-proof, so that in an event of a risk, people don't have to think too much, but they can basically revert to routines. Last but not least, technology is supporting all of this, as I said. We're using a mixture of technology in the identification of risk. We have an external platform provider. We have an own SharePoint solution built to immediately assess the impact of a risk. And we are using a SharePoint to track and manage all the different open incidents that are currently being managed. So all in all, this leads to the principle of the 3-legged stool. You need all 3 legs to sit comfortably. If only one of the legs starts shaking, you cannot really concentrate on the task at hand to do. And if one leg breaks, well, you find you're behind on the ground. So you got to keep, managing all of these 3 things at the same time, more or less, to make sure that you have a stable seating. Regarding people, what is really important for us that we have 4 regions. How we're organized, we have by now actually 4 divisions. I omitted the latest edition, e-mobility here. And in each of these divisions and regions, we have at least 1 dedicated counterpart that we can revert to in case something happens. The responsibility is split in such a way that my corporate team takes care of the governance and the standards of the risk management process. So we are responsible, we are owning the process. We basically also own the tools. We have developed the tools. We have the tool ownership with our external partner. We also provide the data analytics and the reporting. And my job is to liaise with top management and adjacent functions to align on certain big topics. We have our regions, who are basically our eyes, ears, hands, brains, hearts, you name it, in the regions. They are also the immediate contact to the local plants, and they also help us with the contact with the local logistic providers and also with the mitigation activities if something happens. And then last but not least, we have our divisions, who are our internal clients, so to speak. We do this on behalf of them. They always verify their risk appetite. So what should we focus on? Because we're just 4 ladies, the risky ladies, managing this on a global basis in my corporate team. So we only have finite resources. And then they also approve of all the contingency plans so that once something happens, we don't have to ask them for permission. It's informing and starting to act immediately. So this is the work division we have, and we couple this also with training. We're currently working on a web-based training together with purchasing to raise the awareness and understanding for risk management. Then we are also training the process that we have developed to foster the understanding and the knowledge. We also have resources available from our external platform provider Everstream with tutorials that people can basically use for self-studying. So it's important to combine different formats because there's different learning styles to engage people and to also keep them engaged. That's the most important. Regarding the process, we have a process that we have safe-proof with Gartner. We have a Gartner license, and I actively engage with the risk management community at Gartner. So we follow a generic risk management process of identify risk, assess impact, respond, and then learn from them, start again. But what we have done is we have slightly redefined it in terms of a short-term horizon for risk management and a more mid and longer-term horizon. In the short-term horizon, which we kind of call reactive risk management, if you want to call it, we make sure that in the identification stage, we have a daily screening process in place using our external provider with a standard operating procedure that doesn't take us longer than, I think, 25 to 30 minutes. I have my teammate with me here, Shika Kalesh, so in the breaks, you can also talk to her about these things. Customized notifications we get from this platform, so digitized as much as possible. In the assessing stage, we use our own built tools to check, is there actually an impact on our active transports right now? So do we have to do something or actually not? And then at the respond and mitigation stage, we basically use this information in case we have an active transport that is hit by a certain event. We dedicatedly go to the affected plant and region and ask them, can you deal with this kind of delay? If they say us, yes, we can, thank you for letting us know, we can change production schedules, we have inventory, then we can accept the risk, nothing done, everyone is informed, a premium freight may be avoided. If they cannot accept it for whatever reason, they will probably ask us to do something. And we can either do in the transport management area on short-term basis, we can start speeding up the post-carriage, so from a port, airport to the plant, for instance, or we can even organize an air freight, which is the last resort option, so to say. That's for the short term. For the more mid and longer term, so the more predictive kind of foreseeing the swans and the rhinos, you mentioned it, we use several sources to identify them. One is our platform provider, Everstream Analytics. They not only have alerts on a daily basis and analysis of those alerts, but they also provide webinars and special briefings on certain situations. We turn to newsletters from our providers. There's external seminars, events like this, where you use the wisdom of the crowd, and also the internal network, of course. If compliance hears something, global security, you name it, we have channels to them to make sure we know what's going to happen. Similar to above, we double check with our network, will we be hit or not? And if we are hit, how big is it? And then if we say like, yeah, okay, we actually have to do something about this, we make proactive plans and align those up front with our stakeholders. So that's also what you said, Winfried, proactive solution building. And we get approval so that in case it hits us, we already have plans, slides, meeting participants, approvals for certain budgets to get into motion. So far, so good. 2 more slides before I dive on the technology part and the last part. So one part on how you can prepare for the white swan, so to say. So remember, it's those ones that you can assess the probability and the likeliness of occurrence. We go through this list of risks. This is very small, but the slides are going to be shared. We go through this list and basically see, okay, to what extent is our Schaeffler network impacted by these ones? We use actually historical data from our external provider to map this, to pre-map this. It's complemented with regional and local input, so we kind of adjust it a bit. And then basically we make plans for each of these events and get a pre-approval from our internal customer, the divisions, that they're like, okay, in case this happens, this is your plan, this is fine. You don't have to ask me for permission anymore, go ahead. So this is one way of speeding up the response time in the reactive management space. In the more strategic, proactive one, it's about scenario analysis and contingency planning, of course. I have two examples with me. The extreme weather scenario analysis we did, I think, last year in April-ish, May-ish, when Everstream came out with a big webinar about the extreme weather events, so the intensity and the frequency of cyclones and hurricanes increasing in 24 hurricane typhoon season. And what we did there, basically, because we realized, okay, there's a weather phenomenon that is going to cause us trouble this year, and instead of going into a phase of firefighting, we said we got to do something about this. So we had briefings with them and also checked in with our providers and asked them, if this happens, what is kind of the maximum delay that you're expecting? With this information, we suggested to apply a seasonal buffer calendar that we now have actually implemented in SAP that is approved by the divisions, known by the regions, and that was implemented in May or June for the hurricane season, starting off September to November-ish, I would say. And we had no single complaint about delays during the hurricane season compared to 23, when we were still firefighting. I mean, that was the first year that we were initiated and established. But I mean, we did an interview round. We even talked to the plant managers. We're like, what do you mean? What delays? So they were moving on already. So they were with different topics. So that really worked out and helped to reduce the firefighting so that we can focus on something else, which is the preparation of the US East Coast port worker strike that was threatened to happen in October 1st, actually happened last year for 3 days, right? Ports were on strike. And we got a hold of this information already in March and got together with all the divisions and said, like, okay, listen, the likelihood of this it's actually probable, right? And we need to do something about this. We don't know if it's going to happen or not, 50-50 chance kind of. If a wage agreement is reached, we don't have to do anything because operations are running. So we presented this the scenario to the divisions, and they said, you know what? We're going to accept this risk. Let's just gamble and let's go into it. We have some inventory here and there. We are ready to do some air freighting. That was the first phase of the port strike. As you might have followed the news, they said, okay, we're stopping the port strike 3 days into the strike, running normal again. And I said, like, yeah, but until 15th of January, because then we have a renegotiation of the wages. We again went with this information to our divisions, and they said, well, we learned from this. We had 3 days of strike that did cause a few issues here. We had premium freight, so they evaluated the cost. And then they actually asked us to go for the rerouting options that we had suggested to them. That actually saved us money beforehand and didn't get us into the firefighting mode. Luckily, the strike didn't happen. The rerouting was in place anyways, right? Because with transportation, you have to act before something actually happens to be on time. We're still in evaluation of the financial impact, but we're right now rather certain that we are break even or maybe even reduced. And we find another solution how to transport our stuff into the US East Coast. So these are two successful examples. And I would say that the left-hand side kind of goes into the black swan area. The right-hand side is kind of between a rhino and a white swan area. But you see that the same risk response was there. It doesn't matter if it's a black swan, a gray rhino, or a white swan. The way how you would go about and inform a line is the same. It's in the identification stage where you basically have to widen your radar and make sure that you use different sources to do this. Last but not least, technology I mentioned. This is, if you would log into Everstream Analytics, this is what the platform looks like. So you have a map of your network with the different triangles are risks. The donuts are different facilities in our network. How it works is that we feed Everstream with the locations of our suppliers. Together with purchasing, we feed the Schaeffler plants into it, ports, airports, the logistics network, and also the lanes. So where we have stuff going from A to B. What we get out of it is real-time and AI-based monitoring, customized alerts. We can generate reports, analytics for this? What is the risk occurrence? And it helps us to kind of predict what do we have to prepare for. And the real benefits of using technology in this identification stage of risk is that using dedicated platforms, it's verified consolidated information that is relevant for supply chain. You can really customize it. You have a 24-hour coverage, and you can really focus on the value-enhancing tasks and activities, like the contingency planning, the actual proactive risk mitigation strategies. So next to Everstream Analytics that we use for identifying, I told you that we also build a few tools ourselves. So this is the landing page to our so-called transportation risk management tower with different tabs and modules that we've built. I would like to highlight 3 of them at this point. It's the shipment tracking monitor, the material tracking monitor, and the ocean watch. So 2 years ago, I think I can share an anecdote that there was a box of rice falling in China, and we were like, what do we do? Oh my goodness, we didn't have any transparency when we started. And then we said, like, wait, we have to change this, right? So we basically put our hands down and we connected with all the relevant data sources that we had and brought it all together in this platform, so that now within 30 seconds, I think I'm not exaggerating, clicking a few filters, we immediately see that on a certain trade lane between A and B, we actually have active materials or not. And this puts us in a position to really know, hey, do we have to act? Do we have to waste our time? Or can we just let it go because right now we're not impacted? And still inform, hey guys, there's a big event, no worries, we're not impacted. We currently don't have active shipments here. The material tracking monitor is the same thing, but just twisted around. Instead of looking for certain lanes, you can type in the material number. So it's a different target audience, our master planners and the plants who can use this tool. And the Ocean Watch actually gives us the ability to monitor on a GPS basis the vessels that are carrying our goods right now. So this is really helpful for a cyclone hurricane coming up, that we can identify all of the different vessels. We have the material number, the receivers, the shippers available in just a few seconds. So this is built on, based on shipment data that we receive from our LSPs. We use SAP material numbers, and we use Everstream incidents history of it to connect all the dots. The last thing I would like to show you is a global risk register that we've built on a SharePoint basis, where if we identify a risk, we are hit by it, we have to manage it, all is registered in here. With responsibility, who opened the incident, who is it hitting, what is the information, what is the risk score, so that we can track all the different risks that we have currently going on. And what is really important is that key elements are that you can uniquely identify each risk. So each of these has a unique identifier at Schaeffler. Time raised, who is managing it, the risk attributes, so on which mode did it happen, what type of risk is it, and also some risk administration. So by now I think we have around 360, maybe as we this morning, but maybe 370 incidents that we've opened and actively managed. And we have closed about 320, I checked yesterday. So there's still kind of a few open cases because you still have to go after and have the documentation. Good, so this brings me to the summary slide. Hopefully I'm right in time, Otto, because I see you standing up there already. Key takeaways, and I would like you to, while I'm talking about the key takeaways, already take to scan the QR code, because we have prepared a survey, a small one with 5 or 6 questions that we would like to use as input for the roundtable. And I will also share the results afterwards with the organizers. So key takeaways for building holistic transport risk management. Again, transport risk management. The next phase is then to connect to other areas. Understand who's your client. For who are you doing this? In our case, it's our divisions who are basically paying us to do this. And why are we doing this? Well, because there's an end customer who's waiting for goods, right? We have a reputation to lose. It's competitive advantage that we would like to keep. So you have to engage your internal customer and stakeholders from the get-go, get their approval, because otherwise it gets really difficult to get approvals for contingency measures, maybe even have uncomfortable decisions like, for this one we have to build inventory, because it always hurts to build up inventory. You have to have a set of believers and doers, so invest in people. The human factor, really, it's important that all of these tools are known, people are trained, people can give feedback. They say like, hey, this tool works, this doesn't work, can you do something with it? Be transparent. So the team of risky ladies at Schaeffler is really continuously on a daily basis, probably in contact with 10 of our stakeholders on a daily basis to really make sure that everything is working properly as they need it. Technology follows process, not the other way around. So if you have people in your company, especially managers, who force you, like, go look for technology that's going to solve the problem. No, it doesn't. If you don't have a proper process in place and a network of people who can work the technology, use the input from technology, you don't reach anything. Data quality, as you said, Otto, I had to smile because this is exactly the issue. Data quality is key. Should in, should out, right? So you have to identify what data is important for you out of the billion data points you generate, and then find the people who are responsible for the data quality. Explain to them why their work is so important for you. Get them as an ally. Last but not least, keep improving. We're not done. We're evolving as we speak. Just this morning, we got a call on breakfast from a stakeholder, and we're already brainstorming, okay, how can we solve this? And we already have like an idea for 1 or 2 sub-projects that can probably follow out of this. And I'm curious to hear your ideas to maybe even fill up the pipeline for Schaeffler Transport Risk Management even more. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Nadine, for this presentation.